My name is Claire Ashford. I was 20 years old in my first year of university when I went on one date with a man who then spent the next 6 months making me afraid to check my phone. And before I tell you that story, I need to tell you about a man named James who drugged a British tourist in Colombia and walked him through 4 hours of ATM withdrawals while he had no idea any of it was happening. Because both of these stories are about the same thing. The person across from you can seem completely normal right up until the moment they stop pretending. Drop a comment if you have ever had a bad feeling on a date that turned out to be right. Keep listening because one of these stories ends with a man sitting on steps across from a cafe for 6 hours waiting for a woman to leave work. Liam, I want to start by being honest about how normal the beginning was, because that is the part people always gloss over when they tell stories like this. They start at the frightening part. They skip the 3 weeks of perfectly ordinary conversation that made the frightening part so hard to process. I was in my first year at university in Edinburgh. I had moved into a dormitory away from most of the people in my lectures, which meant my social life was slower to build than I had hoped. My best friend from home had convinced me to try online dating not as a serious project, but as a way to meet people in a new city and practice being social. I joined a dating app and started browsing. Most of the profiles were unremarkable. Then I came across Liam. He was tall, good-looking, studying something in the sciences. His photos were candid rather than posed, which I took as a good sign. His opening message was clever without being trying too hard clever. We started talking, and within a few days I was genuinely looking forward to his messages. We chatted for 3 weeks. He was funny and easy to talk to. He asked questions about my life and remembered what I said. He seemed like exactly the kind of person my friend had predicted I would find if I just gave the app a genuine chance. He asked me to dinner, a proper dinner, a nice restaurant in the city center, not just drink somewhere casual. He said he wanted to do it properly. The date itself was good. He was a gentleman in the early part of the evening, the kind of consideration that registers as genuine when you are not yet suspicious of anything. He held the door. He was good at conversation. The food was good, and the evening moved easily through topics without the gaps and grasping that make bad first dates feel so long. Then toward the end of the night, he started pushing for the evening to continue in a direction I was not ready for. I told him clearly that I was not that kind of person, meaning I was not someone who moved that quickly on a first date, and that I needed to know someone much better before going there. He accepted it. He walked me to my taxi and was perfectly appropriate about it. I went home thinking the date had gone well overall. One awkward moment at the end that had been handled and moved past. Then the text started. The first few were normal. He said he had a great time and wanted to see me again. I said I had too, and I would like that. Then the frequency increased. Messages at 11 at night, messages at 2 in the morning, multiple messages in a row when I did not reply quickly enough. The content of the messages escalated in a way that was hard to track in real time because each individual message was only slightly worse than the last. He said he had not stopped thinking about me. He said he felt a connection he had never felt before. He said things that no one says after one date to a person they barely know. I tried to respond warmly, but with distance. I said I liked talking to him, but things were moving a bit fast. He replied that he understood and apologized. Then the next message said he was in love with me. I stared at that message for a long time. We had been on one date, one dinner. We had known each other for less than a month of online chatting. The word love in that context sat in my chest like something wrong, not romantic, but alarming, the way a sound is alarming when it happens in a part of your house where no sound should be coming from. I texted back that I had no idea how he could think that, given how little time we had spent together. I told him gently that he barely knew me. The response was a wall of text. He was hurt. He was angry. He told me I was being cold and dismissive. He told me I was the one. The messages came in pairs, one after the other, a pattern I noticed almost immediately. One message that frightened me, then another that tried to explain away the fear. Do not make me come find you, followed by, I know that sounded bad, I just miss you. I thought you were the one, followed by, why can't you see how good we could be? The alternating pattern was the part that stayed with me longest. Not because it was inconsistent, but because it was too consistent. It repeated through the night with the precision of something that had been done before. The escalation and the retreat, the threat and the softening, the cycle of fear and doubt that was designed to keep me reading and keep me uncertain. I turned my phone off and cried myself to sleep. The next morning, I told him to delete my number and stop contacting me. He called 30 times throughout the day. When I would not answer, he switched to text, the same paired pattern as before, running through the evening until I turned my phone off again. He called once more at 6 in the morning, which is what finally made me pick up. I was already awake when it rang. I answered and I told him exactly what I thought of his behavior. I told him it was disturbing. I told him he needed to stop. I told him if he contacted me again with threatening messages, I would go to the police, and I meant it. He went quiet on the line. I could hear him breathing. Then he started apologizing in a rush, interrupting himself, talking about how overwhelmed he had been, how he was usually not like this, how if I just gave him one more chance, he would show me how good things could be between us. I told him I did not want to see him again. I told him not to contact me, then I hung up. For almost a month, nothing. I genuinely thought it was over. I had friends who joked about it with me over drinks. I started to think of it as the bad date story I would tell for years. The guy who said he was in love with me after one dinner. The 12 phone calls in a row. The morning call at 6. It became, in retrospect, almost funny. Then he found me on Facebook. I had lowered my privacy settings when I arrived at university to make it easier to connect with people from my lectures. He started commenting on my photos, not threatening comments. Pleasant ones, which in some ways was worse because pleasant comments are harder to escalate to police. He posted on my wall. He liked everything I posted. He was everywhere on my profile within a few days, a constant, visible presence. I blocked everything as quickly as I could, every account, every address. I reported each one. The comments stopped. Then he found my email. The emails were different in tone from the texts. Calmer, more composed, the language of someone who had decided that the direct approach had not worked and was trying something more measured. He said he thought about me when he saw me around campus. He said he had made mistakes in how he communicated, and he understood if I needed space. He said he was not ready to give up on something that felt so real to him. I did not reply. I blocked every email address as he created them. The emails dropped off. 6 weeks went by with nothing. I allowed myself cautiously to think it was finished. I had taken a part-time job at a small cafe in the town center. Good management, regular customers, a pleasant place to spend 3 evenings a week and Saturday mornings. I had been working there for about a month when one of my colleagues mentioned during a quiet period in the afternoon that a man had been sitting on the steps across the road for several hours. She described him as unusual, not threatening exactly, but sitting with a particular fixed attention directed at the cafe front windows. I got that specific sinking feeling before I even turned to look. The feeling of a thing you had allowed yourself to believe was over-revealing that it had not been over at all. I went to look. He was there, sitting with his arms on his knees and his eyes aimed at the front of the building. We made eye contact for less than 2 seconds before I went straight to the back of the cafe. My manager was one of those people who does not ask unnecessary questions. I told her the situation in about 4 sentences. She went outside and told him the police were being called and he should not be waiting near a woman's workplace. Then she sent me to her office to call them myself. I had kept screenshots. I want to say this clearly because it is the most useful piece of practical information in this entire story. From the very beginning, when the messages first turned threatening, I had screenshots. I had not been certain I would ever need them, but I had told myself when I made the threat to involve police that I would not make it an empty one. So every time a message arrived that crossed into intimidating language, I took a screenshot and emailed it to myself. The officer who handled my case went through all of it. The timeline, the pattern, the volume, the content. She said the record I had built was exactly what they needed. She told me they would be in contact with him. They called him. That was how it was described to me, checking his thinking. One phone call from a uniformed officer who made clear that his behavior had been documented and was being monitored. He never contacted me again after that. About a year later, I was at a pub in the city. I got talking to a woman in the smoking area. She was describing a nightmare she had had with a man she had matched with online. One date, then texts at all hours, then the love declaration after a week, then the threats wrapped in apologies, the same alternating pattern. I asked her if his name was Liam. Her face. His name was Liam. We became friends. We still are. We live in different cities now, but we stay in contact, and when either of us starts dating someone new, we check in with the other. A small network of two people who understand something about patience and documentation and not making threats you are not prepared to follow through on. The drug, the second story, is not mine. It belongs to a man named James who told it to me over drinks about 3 years after it happened. He was 32 when we spoke about it, and he had the calm of someone who had processed a very bad experience enough to discuss it without the edges showing. He was 29 when it happened. He had quit a corporate job in the UK, saved enough to travel, and chosen Colombia as his first destination. He spent 3 weeks in Bogota, then took a short flight south to Cali for a salsa festival he had been told was worth the trip. He was at a bar during the festival when he made eye contact with a woman across the room. She was beautiful, and she let the eye contact hold for long enough to mean something. He went to the bar when she did and asked if he could buy her a drink in his best Spanish. Her name was Maria. She was a university student. Her English was good enough that they spent the evening moving between languages. He found her easy to talk to and effortlessly charming. She declined his offer to come to his hotel that night, explaining with a smile that Colombian girls did not work that way, but she gave him her number and asked him to WhatsApp her. They met a few days later for coffee and then dinner, and then more drinks at a quieter place. Everything about her behavior throughout the evening was genuine and consistent. Nothing felt constructed or performed. James told me he had always considered himself a streetwise person and that nothing, not a single moment, triggered any alarm. When the bar closed, they bought beers for the walk back. She went into the shop to get them while he waited outside. The beers were already open when she came out. That is the last thing he remembers clearly. Walking through the warm evening air, her voice beside him, the lights of the street. After that, nothing. He woke up the next morning in his hotel bed. The sheets were a mess. His head was a weight pressing down on him from the inside, in a way that bore no resemblance to any hangover he had experienced in 30 years of occasional drinking. He spent a long time lying still because sitting up made the nausea worse. When he finally managed to move, he looked for his phone. Not there. His wallet was gone too. He had been in the habit of leaving his bank card tucked inside his passport in his luggage, which is the only thing that prevented the morning from being completely without resource. He got dressed, found his card, and went to find Maria's hotel to see if she could help him piece together what had happened. The manager at the address she had given him said no one by that description had ever stayed there. He stood on the pavement outside and accepted the shape of what had happened. He walked to an ATM. He needed cash. He pressed the withdraw button for an amount he could easily afford. Insufficient funds. He tried a second machine. Insufficient funds. At the third machine, he checked his balance. He had been carrying the equivalent of 20,000 British pounds in that account. His savings, his travel fund, the money that had allowed him to quit his job and leave the country. His balance was 4,000 Colombian pesos. That was approximately £1. He went to the police station. His Spanish was functional, and the officers understood him clearly. He described what had happened from the beginning. One officer looked at the other and said a single word: scopolamina. Scopolamine is a drug derived from certain plants in the nightshade family. It has legitimate medical applications. In the concentration that James had been given, it produces a state that looks from the outside like mild intoxication. The person under its effects is awake and responsive and appears to be making their own decisions. From the inside, there is essentially nothing. No memory formation, no recognition of what is happening, no ability to resist. The police told James what they believed had happened. After the drug took effect, he would have been walked from ATM to ATM across the city over several hours. He would have entered his PIN each time when asked. He would have handed his phone to whoever was standing next to him when the bank's fraud department called to verify the transactions. He would have confirmed everything correctly and calmly, and then forgotten immediately that any of it had occurred. His bank, when he eventually reached them, confirmed that he had passed all fraud checks. He had spoken to their team. He had given correct answers to all security questions. They were sympathetic, but the position was that criminal fraud claims required a criminal investigation and compensation would be a long process. The police could do very little. Prosecuting scopolamine crimes is extremely difficult. Without a list of specific locations where the withdrawals occurred, they could not build a case. He left Colombia early. His parents wired him enough to get home. It took months before he was well enough in himself to talk about it without the particular shame that comes from having been deceived so thoroughly that you participated in your own robbery without knowing. He told me the thing that actually got him through the worst of it was a piece of information the police gave him before he left. Scopolamine overdoses are extremely common among the people who use it this way. The people administering it rarely have precise knowledge of dosage. Many tourists who have been robbed this way have been found dead in their hotel rooms the following morning. Not robbed and murdered, just given too much by someone who did not know where too much began. James went home with 4,000 pesos and a serious headache. Others have not gone home at all. The escape plan. The third story is mine again. This one is shorter and the ending is less dramatic than what came before it. But I am including it because it is the most common version of the danger, the everyday version, the version that does not make the news but that many people recognize when they hear it. About 2 years after the Liam situation, I tried online dating again. I found someone on OkCupid who seemed different from the pattern I had learned to look for. We talked for several weeks. He seemed measured and self-aware. He was passionate about film, particularly indie horror, which I was also genuinely into. He made me laugh in the specific way that requires actual intelligence. He suggested our first date be at his apartment where he would cook and we could watch a film. I discussed this with my friend. She knew his full address. We had a code word system, a word I could put in a text to her that would trigger a call with a believable excuse for me to leave. I was 6'2", and he had mentioned he was 5'7". I told myself this mattered. I am not entirely proud of that calculation, but I made it. I got to his apartment, and the cooking turned out to be a bottle of expensive wine he had not opened yet. He had not bought food. He talked about the wine at length. He seemed confused by my frustration about the missing dinner, as though the wine should have been sufficient, and my expecting actual food was a miscommunication. I ate some chips and toast I found in his kitchen and told myself to reset my expectations. Then he said he had a film for us to watch. He had been building anticipation about it for days. I had assumed it would be something I had not seen, something he was excited to share. He pulled out a Serbian film. I had seen it. I told him so. I told him I was not interested in watching it again. He insisted. He said I had not understood it properly the first time. He said the reason I did not appreciate it was because I had missed the deeper meaning. He spoke about it with the energy of someone who had prepared this conversation in advance. I decided in that moment he would not be getting a second date. I kept that decision off my face and sent my friend the code word. He noticed me on my phone. He asked who I was texting with an irritated edge in his voice that had not been there before. I said I was letting a friend know I would be home late. He relaxed completely. His whole posture changed. He assumed something about what that meant. My friend called about 8 minutes later with an emergency that required me to leave. She told me loudly enough for him to hear that there had been a break-in at our flat. I asked her to come get me and gave his full address clearly and directly, letting the volume of the call do what it needed to do. She said she would be 40 minutes. 40 minutes I had not planned for. The film was playing. He was drinking. He got drunker as the film progressed and quieter. The talking replaced by a fixed quality of attention that I tried not to look at directly. Then there was a particular scene. I am not going to describe it. If you know the film, you know what I'm referring to. When it happened, he started breathing loudly through his nose in the dark room. I turned my head slightly to look at him without fully turning. He was staring at the screen with an expression I cannot fully describe. Then he moved closer on the couch until our hips were touching. I told him that was too early. He made a sound and asked why not. I said my friend was almost there. He said that was exactly why we should not waste any more time. I stood up, picked up my bag, and told him I was sorry, but I had to go. I walked to the door and opened it and went into the hallway. Behind me in the dark apartment, I heard him make a sound that is the only word for it, a screech. Not loud enough to bring neighbors to their doors, but loud enough to reach me in the hallway. He said, "You are not leaving." I walked faster. I got to the building entrance, got it open, and walked out into the street without looking back. I put distance between myself and the building as fast as I could manage at a pace that did not look like running. I kept looking over my shoulder. He did not follow. My friend arrived within 2 minutes. In the car, I told her the whole thing. When I got to the part about the film and the breathing, she stopped apologizing about the errand and went quiet. I filed a report with the police a few days later. They were honest that the behavior had not technically crossed into criminal territory, but they said they would keep his name on file. They thanked me for reporting. I do not know if it helped. I hope it did. I know that if anything came up later with his name attached to it, my report would be sitting there in a record somewhere. The things these three have in common. James Liam, the man with the wine. 3 different situations, 3 different levels of severity. But all 3 depended on the same thing. The initial period of appearing completely normal. The window of time between first contact and first warning sign, during which a person builds enough trust, comfort, and positive association to make the warning sign easy to dismiss. With Liam, it was 3 weeks of good conversation. With Maria, it was an entire evening that felt genuine from start to finish. With the man and the wine, it was weeks of clever messages, followed by a first meeting that started as advertised. All 3 of them were exactly what they appeared to be, right up until they were not. I have thought about this a lot since that night with Liam, when I sat in my dormitory room reading paired messages on my phone, one that frightened me, and one that told me I should not be frightened over and over through the dark hours. The pattern he used was designed to keep me in a state of uncertainty, not afraid enough to act decisively, not calm enough to stop paying attention. In that uncertain middle state, I kept reading, kept engaging, kept trying to assess whether the danger was real enough to justify the disruption of going to the police. What I know now is that the moment the uncertainty arrived, that specific feeling of something being wrong that you are trying to explain away, that was already enough, that was already sufficient. The first message that said, "Do not make me come find you," was sufficient. I did not need to collect more evidence to be sure. I just needed to already have the screenshots and make the call. The call I made 6 months later, after seeing him on the steps outside my workplace, accomplished exactly what calling earlier would have accomplished. One phone call from an officer, done. The only thing the 6 months achieved was 6 months. Screenshot everything. Not in case you need it. From the beginning automatically, because you may not be able to predict which message is the one that matters until it is several messages later and you cannot go back. And always have an escape plan, not just for the extreme situations. For every first date, every first meeting, every time you agree to be somewhere alone with a person you do not know well. Your friend knows the address. You have a code word. She is 40 minutes away and you know how to fill 40 minutes. The code word exists so you never have to make a decision in the moment about whether the situation is bad enough to use it. You decide that in advance when you are calm and thinking clearly, and then in the apartment, you just send the message and the decision is already made. James told me he counts his blessings. He woke up with a headache and an empty account. He walked away. Not everyone who has been handed an open beer on a warm Colombian evening has woken up at all. Count your blessings, screenshot everything. Have an exit before you need one. And if someone says something that makes the ground feel slightly wrong under your feet, do not wait for the next message to see if it gets better. It will not get better.